Why do so many of us talk all day long at work, online, or in relationships, but we don't feel like we're being understood?
Well, there's a baseline of all miscommunication, and that is the dissonance. The what I said is not exactly what is heard. Um, I might, and maybe even in your relationship or anybody's listening, anybody's relationship in a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is. If you're in an argument with them and you say this, you go, okay, what did I say? You tell me, what did I say? And then they regurgitate it to you. And never do they ever do it in a way that you go, yep, that's exactly how I said it. You always think, that's not what I said. That's not how I sounded. That's not the face I made. There is this underlying message, frequency is the word I like, that I think I'm saying one thing, they hear something else very different. And that applies to every communication that we have. We talk all day long. And in fact, in my opinion, it's impossible not to communicate. You can also communicate by saying nothing at all. So even though it's the absence of sound, it's not the absence of communication. You know, if I don't text you in 5 minutes, that's one thing. But if I don't text you in 5 months, well, I communicate something very different. So to me, it's the underlying tone of we don't feel heard because most of the time what we're saying is not the same thing as what's being received.
And how can we improve that disconnect so that we have better conversations? We can speak our mind while also having the confidence that the other person's going to receive it in a way that's going to move the conversation forward.
That depends largely on context. If we want to put a general rule to it, how do we make sure that what we say is exactly what is heard? It's going to be very hard to do it at the outset. Because if I'm going to just start talking to you, Doug, I don't know what's going on in your mind right at that moment. Maybe you're daydreaming. Maybe your thoughts are somewhere else. There's nothing I can say that's going to make you automatically just crack open your mind and me dump my information exactly how it is intended and how I want to give it. Instead, what helps is a lot of the time after the conversation, when it's the feedback that you get, somebody is going to respond to you and you get to ask the question, wait, what did you hear? Rather than, that's not what I said. You ask, what did you hear? And what you get to understand is you learn from their perspective. Well, what I heard was you say X, Y, and Z, and you go, no, that's not what I meant. You're trying to fix that. You can almost, I can't see any way you can fix that on the first swing. Now, I could teach ways to maybe come into the conversation. For example, I could ask the question, hey, what would be the best way for me to convey, how I feel about this to you? Hey, what would be the most helpful thing I can do to relay my thoughts on this? Help me understand where we're going in this conversation. Things I can do at the outset to kind of frame it, kind of twist, to tighten the screw down to say, this is how I want to begin the conversation. So we can say, how do we improve? We can use some questions of intent at the beginning that are going to place more emphasis on what's about to be said. Second of all, we can then ask follow-up questions to make sure that what was said was actually what was heard by them.
And what about like in a general sense, like for people who are like at work or just having casual conversations at home and they just want to make sure that they like are being seen and they're getting their point across in a way where the other person is like authentically like hearing them? Because I feel like sometimes people, they feel like they're saying things and then the other person's just like not listening to them, and not in a combative way, just like in a general way.
A big difference to me on if you're communicating professionally or you're communicating just casually with your friend. There's a different set of expectations. Because professionally, if I'm not communicating with you or really paying attention, I'm decreasing your value. If I am not paying attention to you, not really listening casually, it's speaking of value, but it's also deeper because this is somebody you trust and are all the more transparent with. Like if somebody at work's not really paying attention, that's one thing. If my kid or my spouse, my wife's not paying attention and not really want to listen, that's going to feel different to me. So those are two different contexts. Generally, how do you make sure that you feel more heard in conversation? The best thing you can do is at the outset frame the conversation of the importance of it. Hey, I'd like to tell you something that's important to me. Hey, I'm going to talk to you about something that I need your attention on. Hey, I don't want to talk about this until I have your full attention. So what you're doing is giving them like a very early sign that says, hey, I don't even want to get into this conversation until I have your full attention. I don't even want to get into this until we actually make time for it. A lot of the times we get into conversation in a casual way that doesn't suggest that something is important. So maybe you and I are talking about something and I haven't made it clear that this is really important to me. I just assume you would know.
And I think one of the other things that can happen with people is that they want to be liked by everyone and not necessarily respected. And I guess this is better example of this happens, I'm sure, at work with this, where they're just being nice and they're worried about just being liked by everyone, and then that creates a whole other subset of problems. Like talk about like how can people be like respected when the world is so obsessed with being liked?
My thought is if you're someone that everybody likes, then you're probably not being authentic to yourself. There is preferences and tastes to everybody. You're not meant to be for everybody. You're not meant to be. Now that doesn't mean you can't be kind and nice and somebody say, yeah, they're a nice person, but that doesn't mean you have to make everybody absolutely like you to where your entire worth is derived from them. That makes you codependent on the whole world, where you go, I can't be okay if you're not okay with me. I'm not okay with me unless you're okay with me. Well, that's codependency by definition. So it's that outward need, right? And in conversation, and really in any context, you'd say, well, how do we deal with this? Want to be liked versus want to be respected. I can be respected by you even though you don't like me. I'm okay with somebody not liking me. The question anybody listening has to ask is, am I okay with somebody not liking me? And if so, why is that? Why is that? Is it because it doesn't feel good? Is it because it gives you some kind of angst or heartburn? If I had to guess, the reason is if somebody else is not happy with you, then you can't be happy with yourself. And you're always going to continue to derive your own self-worth based on how you perceive or assume somebody's worth is placed on you.
So I think when people hear like terms like we were just talking about, and they say that, I want to be nice to people because if I just want their respect and have to stand up for myself, that means I have to be mean. What do you say to that?
Being respected does not mean being feared. Being respected does also mean you don't have to be loved. There's that age-old question of, is it better to be loved or to be feared? And that gets to the root of, how do you define respect? Respect is, by definition, admiration for someone because of their abilities, actions, accomplishments, whatever it is. It's a deeply rooted admiration for someone. That does not mean that you have to love them or really even like them. I might respect, I had a really harsh basketball coach. I didn't love him, but I definitely respected him. My dad, I love my dad, and I also respect my dad. So the two are not mutually exclusive. If you're somebody who thinks I have to be nice, if you have this sense of I want to be nice, but I want to be respected, that means I have to be feared. You don't have to, the both, let me rephrase it. Neither one is the right answer. It is more about respect is a verb. It is an action. That's how we derive the meaning from it. How do I know that I'm speaking too aggressively? It's because I'm not showing respect for you. How do I know when I'm speaking too much of hesitant and being a people pleaser? That means I'm not having respect for myself. You can be assertive and say, you know what, I respect both myself. And because I respect myself and I respect you, I'm willing to tell you what others would not. I'm willing to tell you the hard truth. And in that, that is something that is admirable. And you will find the respect from somebody else, especially when you do hard things. When you do hard things, people will admire it, even if it's not something that they necessarily want.
How much does self-talk play into these conversations we're having, like with how people show up?
Self-talk is step number one. If I let me put it this way, some of the most harsh people I've seen, the people in your life that you know they nag you the most, they're the most detailed, they complain, they harp on you, they're critical. The people in your life who are critical, I can guarantee you they are just as harsh on themselves as they are on you, because that's their internal monologue. They are critical, hard, and harsh on themselves. They have negative self-talk, and that negative self-talk can only come out as negative talk on you. Whether it's what they expect you to do, what you should do, it's the nagging mother-in-law, it's the overbearing father, it's typically parent relationship, because it is, they have in themselves that they were never enough, they were not happy with themselves, so they have to make you their source of happiness and make you in this image for them to be okay with them, even though it's a complete disregard for you and your own identity. To really, you can lose parts of your own childhood, you can lose parts of your own adolescence and even in adulthood, because your whole life has been trying to be somebody else. That goes all into self-talk. If I'm telling myself that I'm not good enough, well, then I'm gonna talk as if I'm not good enough. If I tell myself that I'm an inconvenience and I'm in everybody's way, then that's how I'm going to talk. I'm going to have the over apologies. I'm going to have the over explanations. I'm going to have the, hey, so sorry, just 1 second. I hate to bother you. All of these kind of instances where I am trying to make myself less and less in the conversation, that all begins with the self-talk. So usually, not usually, I would say always, this is one of the few times I would use that extreme. The most important conversation you're ever going to have is the conversation that you have with yourself.
You know, our first couple conversations we've had on the show and a lot of your content revolves around communicating with other people. And, you know, what I just heard you say is just something I want to double click on, because, you know, we haven't covered self-talk with you and I in our dialogue yet. Like, how can people build reps in that self-talk muscle so they can show up more confidently, so they can feel better about themselves? Like, what are some things that people could do on a regular basis to improve that?
One, identify their current core beliefs. Their current core beliefs, not what they wish they were, but what they are now. So what are the, let's say, top 3 to 5 statements? And these are something for somebody to write down. Take the time to write them down. What are your core beliefs? What do you think about yourself? What do you, it's almost like directing your own company values. You know, somebody who's having a hard time in life, one of their core values might be, my worth is derived from everybody else. Maybe that could be a core belief. My core belief is that lies protect me. My core belief is that people can't know the real me. Like the hard, harsh core beliefs that you currently have. And then what you do is write down the core beliefs you wish you had. And all that is just the inverse. It's just the opposite of the core beliefs that you hold right now. And so when you reverse them, for example, if it's lies protect me. The opposite of that is lies hurt me. That's part of your positive core belief, right? So one is you identify these core beliefs. You need to make sure that you have those. Once you do have those, the next step is to actually put those into action and ways of understanding what is your thinking process. In other words, what is the old scripts you've been telling yourself throughout life? Every one of us have this cassette tape, that we put in and play anytime things go hard in life. Anytime difficulty gets cranked up, we play old scripts. And those might sound like, I always have to be perfect. I'm always going to be alone. Nobody's going to be here to protect me. Nobody really cares for me. I'm the only one that I can trust. These core beliefs, right, that are just played on tape that we listen to when things get hard. We as soon as something hard happens in life, we go grab that cassette tape, put it in, play it, and all of a sudden we're hearing in our head, I'm going to be abandoned. Nobody loves me. Nobody respects me. And these are all, tied to childhood identity. This is childhood trauma 101. And what that does is then reflects in exactly that negative self-talk. So what do? You listen to this podcast, you identify your core beliefs, you identify those old scripts and start challenging them. That's what you do. And on top of that, what would be good? Go see a mental health professional. That's what you really need to go do. Because that kind of stuff helps. You need to identify what that old script is. That's the only way. When I coach, like high-end professionals, they always want to talk about first, what are the techniques about the future? And I say, no, we got to go back. We can't, techniques are just Band-Aids, right? You have to go back to find out what are the old scripts I've been playing long before we ever met each other.
And I think another tool is patience, right? And being able to practice patience, because sometimes like people's, I guess, communication techniques or beliefs have been programmed for decades. And then we live in this world of instant gratification and quick fixes and, which I think can be useful, but at times, but the reality is stuff like this doesn't happen overnight. Like you may implement something new and then like a week later you catch yourself like doing something that you used to do. Like how important is practicing patience with all this?
Patience, I mean, it can't be overstated. That not only have patience for others, but patience with yourself, because really what you're doing is showing yourself compassion. When you give yourself some grace to figure it out, if you give yourself some compassion to say, you know what, sometimes things are going to be messy. I find that to be so critical in relationships, is to still love each other in the messy. When, I'm not always going to show up as my best self. And that kind of grace I also have to give to me. I mean, if I think we're the harshest on ourselves more than anybody else. I'm my biggest critic. Me. I am my biggest critic. I am the harshest on me. I am the Jefferson hater 101. That's every one of us are like that. We're very, very hard on ourselves. And sometimes, that element of patience, like you just talked about, goes right into compassion. It goes right into grace. Am I forgiving? Am I being forgiving enough of myself with the hard? Am I allowing myself some space to not always get it right, and notice that simply that I got it wrong, and next time I'm going to choose to do something different.
How does that all show up for you, like the inner critic?
Usually it's always in my own thoughts. I'm an internal processor. My wife, the biggest external processor. And so we're very, very different that way. I talk all in my head. She has to get it all out. And how does that show up for me? So when the biggest critic comes, it's usually playing old scripts that I've had in there since I was a kid, of what I need to be and what I need to do, and who I need to prioritize more than myself. And it's always a daily challenge to make sure, hey, you need to go a little bit easy on yourself. It helps with, my son is 8, about to be 8, and I can look at him and he's my mini me and say, how would I, if this was my son, how would I talk to him? You know, and that's the thing is, I don't talk to myself like I talk to my son, and that I check myself on that a lot. That doesn't mean I always get it right. How does that also show up for me? Usually shows up in my conversations, shows up in how I'm talking. If I'm being critical of my spouse or something going on, it's usually because I'm feeling critical. I'm really being critical on myself, and instead I'm projecting that onto other people. So your communication is a really good mirror and reflection for what's really going on in the content of your character in that moment.
It seems like you, despite what you're saying, for the most part, you have some sense of emotional control. Just my gut feeling with you, even when you're not quote unquote showing up as your best self. And I think this is a challenge for people because triggers come from stress, insecurity, inner critic. How have you learned to build and maintain emotional control um, when you're feeling like stressed or insecure?
When I'm feeling stressed or insecure, I say it. And that's really been my key. If I say it to my wife or to others in my circle, I'm putting everybody on notice. You hear the difference if I was going to have a conversation with you, Doug, and all of a sudden I just start kind of out of nowhere feeling like I'm just steamrolling into you on something, and you can tell I'm talking defensively. I can tell I'm dysregulated, versus me saying, I can tell I'm really stressed right now. I can tell I'm not myself. I can tell I'm not in a good place. And then I start talking. Now you're going to have some more context to that. You can tell already something's going on. So if you begin with the phrase, I can tell I'm not ready to have this conversation. I can tell I'm getting defensive. Whenever you hear those kind of things from me, it's giving you a warning. It's a preview of attraction, of letting you know, hey, this is what's bubbling up for me. That's how I handle that. Another is when I use the phrase, when I hear you say that. Let's say you said something to me and I don't really like it, and I'm not in a place that I know I'm good right now. I'm stressed out. I might say, when I hear you say that, my brain tells me you hate me. My brain tells me that you're upset with me. When I hear you say that, my mind interprets that as you thinking I don't care. When I am narrating out the truth for you of what's happening in my head, I'm speaking to things that are behind the scenes to you. I'm narrating it out rather than me just acting as if what are you saying? I don't care. Is that what you're saying, Doug? You don't think you don't even think I care, do you? And I'm using that emotion rather than speaking it. I say when you claim it, when you say it out loud, you can control it. You say it out loud. So if I instead say, when I hear you say that, it makes me feel as though you don't care about what we're talking about. That gives you some insight to then have a better conversation rather than these unspokenness that's going on in there.
When I think a lot of times people, they equate doing what you just shared with like being weak, like being like, when you say you're stressed or feeling insecure, that
Mm-hmm.
means it's weak to do so. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
actually pretty confident if you have that kind of self-awareness and humility to share. Like, what are your thoughts around that?
There's such a backwards ideology on strength is found in perfection. Strength is found in the harsh, in the cold. When I tell you that I've made a mistake, Doug, I've made a big mistake, and I need to be honest with you. Does that make me sound weak, or does that make me sound like I am strong? Does that make me sound confident, or does that make me sound like I am on the floor? If I were to tell you that I need to say something that's going to be difficult, or it, if I need to apologize for something that's big, do people go, look at this weak person apologizing? That's not what I found to be true. When somebody is apologizing and owns it, us as humans, the whole human population, we say that's a good move. And nobody had to teach us that. We naturally go, all right, that's the way it should be. When you apologize, own your mistake. If I own, take accountability, how in the world could that possibly be weak? It's always a sense of confidence, of moving with integrity. I think that's the undertone there of how are you moving in integrity. If I'm saying, hey, look, I can tell I'm not ready for this conversation, or when I hear you say that X, Y, and Z, if I am actually trying to display my emotions to you, I find that to absolutely be a strength. Now, if I'm using my emotions to manipulate, if I'm using my emotions in an unregulated, dysregulated way, yeah, that can be considered weakness, so to speak. But yeah, it's always a strength.
Yeah, and you're getting out in front of it and you're having emotional control and integrity and confidence because you're just making your point clear and how you're truly feeling. I think what happens is when people don't do that, it comes out anyway indirectly. And that's where it comes across as being like you don't have control of your emotions. You're not mature. You can't handle stress because you don't even have the awareness around your own feelings and or the humility and confidence to share what's authentically going on. I think it comes back to just chasing people's approval. I think people see they fear that they can't be honest or apologize about something because they fear that people won't approve of them or they're going to see them in a different light. And it's just it's a trap we fall into.
I think what we do, let me rephrase it. Every day, we make assumptions based on the first layer in conversation. We base assumptions on the first layer, meaning how we think we feel about it is exactly what's happening in that moment. But when we stop and we ask ourselves, why am I feeling this way? What's going on? We peel back the layer and go, oh, no, it's something else. Then we continue to peel back the layer and we find out it's more. It's not that you forgot to go pick up the keys, right? It's that maybe this person asked you 2 times. Maybe it's not that you didn't go get it, it's that you didn't listen. And then not listening then means that you didn't care. And if that feeling is you didn't care, why does that bother me? Why does it make me feel like you don't care? Because it makes me feel like you don't really want to be with me. Let me keep going. Why does it make me feel like you don't want to be with me? Because it makes me feel like I'm not worthy of being with. Okay, let's pull that. Why do you feel like you're not worthy of being with? Because I'm always alone. Why do you feel that? Because I've always been abandoned. Like it's how not picking up the keys all of a sudden goes to the feeling of the root core of I feel abandoned. So when you stop acting on the layer, the first layer that you see, and you continue to peel back the onion and go, why do I feel that? 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 It goes right back to the very ground zero of what you thought was a first surface now goes to something deep, as though you're going to leave me. I'm always going to be alone. And it happens in an instant. And it's always the first layer that's really talking, even though what you hear is the first. And so it's a continual process. If you say, hey, look, I want to be more emotionally aware, then get used to cutting your onion and peeling back the layers and finding out piece by piece what is happening to me. Get in the habit of asking the question, where is this coming from? Okay, get your answer. Where is this coming from? Why do I feel this? Why do I feel that? Why do I feel that? The more often you do that, the better you're going to find those old scripts that are driving how your relationships are resulting.
Man, it's tough though, right? I think people when they start peeling the onion back a little bit, they're like, "Ooh, that's scarier than I thought," and they have a hard
Yeah,
time. They have a hard time
your
getting real with themselves. Like, how can people get better at being
your eyes
honest
are
with
going to
themselves?
burn, man. Yeah, your eyes are going to burn. Yeah, how do you get better with being honest with yourself? Is being more honest with yourself. We here's how you can be better about being honest with yourself. One, Stop blaming your emotions as a result of other people. Take ownership of those emotions. They are mine, and this is how I'm feeling. Two, allow yourself to feel the full breadth of that emotion. Stop trying to cut it off. Stop trying to make excuses. What does that sound like? Stop dismissing them. Stop trying to rationalize them. Stop trying to blame them on somebody else. Those are your feelings. They are not somebody else's. They are not somebody else's to control. They are only yours to control. And number three, how do you get to better going through your onion? Is what we talked about a second ago, giving yourself the compassion of asking yourself the hard question. And when you realize that how you're acting on the surface has to do with something that is actually 7 layers deep, you're going to see the world in a different way. All of a sudden, you're going to see how you're reacting and responding at work to be different. You're going to see how, oh, this is my habit. This is why I like this. This is why I don't like this. This is why this person irritates me, because they actually remind me of this uncle I had when I was 7. Like you're going to find these layers of triggers that you did not know you existed when you take the time to have some compassion, to ask yourself the hard question and choose to be honest with yourself.
We'll get you back to this video in just 1 second, but first, did you know that I offer one-on-one coaching? That's right. People have been asking me to do it for years, and I finally opened up my book to accept new clients where I can help you transform your life, reinvent yourself, and revamp your mindset. So there's a link below where you can schedule a discovery call because I want to make sure we're the right fit. So click the link, fill out the form, see if we're a good fit, schedule a call, and I look forward to hearing from you. Now back to the show. And I think if people don't do that, they end up people pleasing or chasing people's approval for the rest of their lives. Or like what I think is the hardest thing to stomach is they get walked all over by people throughout the course of their life. How can people make that shift if there's somebody that just gets to the point where like, you know what, I'm so tired of X, Y, and Z walking all over me. I'm so tired of feeling like a doormat. Like, how can people make that transition?
They have the complete power of it. And it's all within what they say next, what they do next. So let's say at the outset, what is the first level? The first level is, does this person have proximity to you? Do you allow them access to you? Who are you giving access to in your life? Who are you allowing to have permission to access you? Have you given your password out to everybody? Does everybody they can just log in and start manipulating your emotions? Who have you granted permission to? And if it's way too many people, then you need to start weeding that out. Then you need to start filtering that out and start culling that list to where it's very few. And sometimes the only person on that list should be you. So who have you given access to that you allow to speak to you in those ways, to make you feel that way? Who are you allowing in your world? You can't just let them walk all over you. We can't stand up for that. So, one, who are you giving access to your life? Number two, what are you standing for? When you determine what you're standing for, whether it's your own integrity, whether it's your own peace of mind, whether it's your own sense of value, there has to be a point where you stop. You stop walking backwards. You stop moving backwards, and you dig your heels in. 3, we're going to use boundaries. Boundaries. Now it can be a very overused term, I feel like, in these days, but they're just as critical as they've ever been. And the people that are most frustrated and disappointed by your boundaries are the very people that need to be put a boundary against. What I like to say is, just because you have a boundary and people are upset about it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means that it's working. That's what that boundary is there for. And so when you were able to put up that kind of boundary in your life, that's going to help protect you from always feeling less than.
Yeah. And boundaries and other things that we've been talking about in the last few minutes, all comes back to respect, right? You talked earlier in our conversation about how you have this immense amount of love and respect for your dad. And I know we touched on the conversation you had with your parents on your own podcast in our last conversation. I'm interested, like, why do you respect your dad so much? And with love, like, what qualities does he have that make you feel that way?
Well, I certainly respect my mom as well.
Yeah.
I Why do I respect my parents? Because they have set a model for me in the best way they know how for me to be a good human. It's the best way to put that. They always say that the worst thing about parents is that they had parents. You know, I I'm about to be 37, and I still feel like on the inside, I'm 23, and I think to myself, I bet my dad feels the same. My dad will say, I look in the mirror and ask myself, who's this old man? And I know that'll be me one day. And I know it'll be, time will march on and it'll be my son or my daughter next having these same questions and thoughts and feelings. Why do I respect them? Because I admire them. I admire them through the troubles and the tribulations and the struggles. People rarely admire you for the actual goal. They admire the work to get there. They admire the discipline. They admire the journey. When somebody says, "Oh, you just ran this marathon," they don't really admire the act of crossing the finish line. They admire all the work and dedication that went into it. And so, for me, for my parents, I admire all that they poured into me and my siblings. Did they make mistakes? Yes. Did they do things, I'm sure, to mess us all up? Yeah. I mean, what parent doesn't? It's time will tell how everything falls out. That doesn't mean that you you have to admire them any less. I admire the model they set for me, specifically on how to communicate and treat one another.
And we live in this world now where like even the slightest imperfections with parents at times mean we have to like cut them out of our lives, right? Instead of like you said, like accepting them for who they were, understanding they had parents and that there's a lot of good um, that comes from our parents if we peel it back enough. Even stuff it could be stuff that you don't want in your next relationship. It could be stuff you don't want in your life. But I think no matter what, there is some level of silver lining there that you can use for personal growth. We've been talking about, relationships and communication. How did your parents' relationship, like what did it teach you about the relationship you want to have with your wife?
They worked for it. They worked for it and they fought for it. Not a single marriage is easy. And I have made an incredible, unfathomable amount of mistakes in my marriage, in my life. And you have to continue to fight for it, even in the face of your own screw ups. Like you told me I think you're going to be married soon. Yeah, yeah. See, and what's going to happen is, which is incredible. Very excited for you. And 6 months is going to be great. Year, 5 years, we're now going, I think we'll be 15 in June. You continually have to fight. There's nothing easy about it. Same for my parents. My parents have been married for, over 40 years. There's nothing easy about it. It is a continual dedication to humility, to letting go of pride, and to be willing to understand and be as vulnerable as you can, because the other person cannot know you unless you are first vulnerable with them. They have to see all the ugly. They can't just see the facade or the personality or the character that you've given them, because and then tell you, it'll run out. It'll you can't hold that forever. It'll run its course. And then what you're left is, have you been vulnerable? They have to know all of your bruises and secrets if you're truly going to open yourself up to connect to someone. So my parents, they say with parents that they did the best they knew how, with the best that they had. And when I know that my parents based off what they did because of, they had parents and my grandparents had parents, like it's all part of the same system.
How did you know that your wife was the one?
My wife is somebody who is has a brain that is unlike any I've known. Something that's brain is very different from mine, and they complement each other in a very attractive way. Do I feel like there is a one? No, I don't. There's not like one person you go, this is it. I'm never gonna want another human and I am this is forever, and you've just, like Twilight, and you're all of a sudden you've bonded for life. It is a choice. It is a continual choice. How do I know she's the one? Because I have decided every time that this is my choice to continue to be in this, despite all of my shame, all of my pain, all of my problems, all of my issues. And same said for her. And we continue to walk in that choice. That's what it is. There's, to me, there's no rose colored, just Disney moment. It's a dogfight, man. It's an absolute back alley knife fight where you are continually having to choose yourself, meaning not you as a person, but choose the relationship.
Thanks for sharing that, man. And I imagine that like during times of trial and tribulation, like confidence gets worked and gets shattered a bit. Like how do you regain confidence in yourself like after you've made a mistake or things don't go your way so you don't spiral into this shame cycle that can last for months or years for people?
Hmm. Shame is hard, because it can, for me, it kind of turns on this like static in my brain. I feel like guys, we're better at compartmentalizing. Um, you can close a folder and kind of shut your brain off to the emotions of that folder. Where I feel like, for at least in my experience, women, every folder is open and they all connect to each other at the exact same moment. And that is a lot harder. What do you do in those moments? My mantra is that I choose to do something different. So I always ask myself in the moment, what can I do that's different than what I'm doing right now? Just something small. What can I do that's different than what I'm doing right in this moment? When I'm showing my ugly, when I am not the person that I want to be, I ask the question, what can I do differently right now? And that's what I do. Whether that is a an affirming, an acknowledging statement, whether it is something that I can share of my own vulnerability of how I'm feeling. Maybe it's even physically. I change my posture. I change my face. I choose to do something different. And it's that choice that separates you from somebody who is wanting to live in shame versus somebody who is wanting to attune and reach out to the other person.
One of the biggest struggles I've had in my life is forgiveness with myself, in my past life from being somebody who was a drug addict, selling drugs, went to jail. It took me years to fully forgive myself. Um, what what helps you like forgive yourself and others like when things don't go your way?
It is a journey to forgive yourself. It is not a fleeting moment. It is not a pass. It is not a play you can call. It is a 24/7 journey. It is a hobbit's tale there and back again and there and back again. And forgiving myself is something that I will always continue to strive for, right? They talk about living amends. How can you choose to live a life in making amends with the people that you've hurt, particularly the people that are closest to you? Um, to say I forgive myself is a statement. To live a life differently, that's the best way to forgive myself. to choose to do something different, to notice where I was and what I would have done, and notice how I'm doing something different now. And that's to continue to say no to invitations, say no to watching this, say no to going there, saying no to a lot of the things you previously would have said yes to, and how you would have acted, how you would have behaved, choosing a different word or response. I think that sometimes forgiveness is best lived out, because I can say that I forgive myself for things that I've done. That doesn't mean that it naturally is going to make it, I'm going to feel forgiveness. So to me, forgiveness is only tied to grace, meaning I have received what I don't deserve. And if I can receive grace, for me, it's God. For others, it's higher power. And how can you receive that? Um, to me, it is by faith alone that I can continue to receive forgiveness, and that way walk in forgiveness for myself.
And I think forgiveness becomes challenging with others when they're saying stuff or belittling you or disrespecting you, and you feel this urge to like act out and to lash out and to be reactive. Like what's the other approach to that? To act in a way where they're not feeling like they're being disrespected in their response, but they're not, acting out of anger where they're going to regret it later.
Well, we could talk, techniques of how do you respond to somebody who's belittling or being rude. What I hear us talking about now is how do you hear that and process it in your own life on a deeper level? For me, when somebody is saying something rude to me, what I typically say in my head is, I've been there. And it's as simple as that. Somebody says something that's a little snide. I think in my head, well, I've been there. And it helps kind of reshift the focus for me of, you know what, I've said mean things too. I've done bad things too. Yeah, it takes humility and understanding I have no pride, none. And knowing that you do something that is hurtful to me, all right, I understand you're going to have to live with that. Now, does that mean I don't have to live with that? I can certainly employ things that are going to let you know, no, that's not going to be acceptable to me. But on a deeper level, it's knowing, yeah, I've been there. I'm not going to choose to take it personally, because even if you say something that's ugly to me, it's my choice of whether or not I hold it or I don't. Do I keep it or do I let it go? I mean, that has to do with forgiveness. That has to do with, you know what, I'm going to give you a lot of grace right now because I can tell you're just not yourself. Rather than me going, I cannot believe you would say that. No, if I think, you know what, I've been there. I can tell you're frustrated. Maybe you're having a hard time. And it is such a blessing in my life to let go of things that I don't have to hold on to. And that includes how others treat me. I mean, I like to say sometimes the best response to somebody's ugly comment is the choice to have a good day anyway. And when you make the choice to say, yeah, I hear that, and you go on and have a wonderful day, oh, that's kind of the best revenge you could ever have. Not that's I am not supporting revenge. I'm just saying that's the best response. That's the best response you can make.
As we're closing this conversation, we've covered a lot of ground, and maybe people have just been so tuned into this they've forgotten certain parts, or they're listening in their car or whatever. Um, like imagine like you're in the car, you're making like a 60-second clip to summarize like the biggest takeaways from what we've talked about and how people can implement what we're talking about into their daily life. Like what are the most important things that you think people should take away from our conversation?
Yeah, let's make a car video. Yeah. Number one, the biggest conversation you're going to have is the conversation with yourself. If your self-talk is not right, the rest of it will not be right. If you cannot be happy with yourself, you will not find that fulfillment in other people. Number two, when it comes to forgiveness and feeling of how do you have this emotional, How do you grow your emotional intelligence? Get used to looking through the layers. Cut open the onion. Your eyes are going to burn, and ask yourself the question, where is this coming from and why am I feeling this? And continue to do it until you hit the rock bottom. And you will know it's the rock bottom, most likely because you'll actually start to tear up when you realize you hit an emotional root that you are not expecting. Number 3, when it comes to finding respect and handling people that are belittling you in some way, techniques are just band-aids in how you respond. It's ultimately going to go down to that deeper sense of understanding I don't have to pick up what somebody else has thrown. I can leave it exactly where it is. And the best response I could ever have is to continue to live a life that matches my integrity rather than trying to match their disrespect.
Well said, Jefferson. Well, thank you so much once again for coming on the podcast. Highly encourage people to listen to Jefferson's show, to buy his book, to follow him on social media. Like, he puts out some of the best content there is. And I share this, with full integrity. Like, he's one of the people that he posts stuff and you implement it into your daily life and it works and it's effective. It's easy to digest, could be hard to implement at times, but it works. So thank you again for coming back on the show.
Awesome. Always great to talk to you, Doug.
What do you think is the number one conversation mistake that people make?
Whenever they get into the conversation, particularly when they're having to push a particular point or view or issue, is that what they say has to be accepted. Whenever I say something, well, we just kind of expect the other person to take it. And when it comes to ideas,